All right, good morning, everybody. Make sure you have any materials for class. We've got this problem that we're working on. It says write an equation for this line. So I've got the steps listed out for you. So it says, how do we find B? Remember, we followed these steps all last week. This is literally all we focused on last week. So find the slope. So remember, you could do two things. You could take the points. So we could say that this was at 3, 1, but that would be much more difficult than just saying, okay, what's our rise, what's our run, what's our change in y, what's our change in x. So if I'm looking at our slope, we're starting at the point furthest to the left. Let me get my pen. Let's see. Shante is coming in. Sorry, people are joining us, so I just want to make sure I let them in. So if we're doing rise over run, we're going to start with our point furthest to the left. So I'm looking at my slope. I'm looking at this point over here. We're going to find our change in y. So imagine that you are, that's you. I'm sorry, I'm not a great artist, guys. You want to get up here to your friend who is up on the second floor. So we want to go up one floor and, oh gosh, this is messy. So we're going to start at the leftmost point. We're going to go up. That's our change in y. Then we're going to go over 1, change in x. So our change in y was 1. Our change in x was 1. So our slope for this one is going to be 1 over 1. And 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So that's going to be our slope for this line. Hold on one second. Let me give some people credit for coming. All right, so our slope of this line is, remember, rise over run. So the change in y divided by change in x. So it's 1 over 1. So that's just going to be simplified is going to be 1. So our slope is 1. So find the slope, plug this into the slope intercept formula. So remember, we did this several times last week. We've got y equals mx plus b. You should have this formula definitely memorized, written down. This will be in your test for sure. All right, we're going to go ahead and replace that m with 1. And the reason we're doing that is because that's what our slope was. Our slope was 1. So y equals 1x plus b. Next thing we're going to do, use a point, x, y, and substitute them into your slope intercept formula. So we were given 2 points on the graph. We can go ahead and use either one of these. I'm just going to pick this one. So remember, we start at the origin, we go over 1, 2, 3, up 1. So this point is at 3, 1. So I've found where that point was on the graph. I'm going to go ahead and substitute in. Remember, these points are written in x, y format. So I'm going to substitute in y is 1. So I'm going to do it in different colors. So, and just to kind of, again, provide a visual for you guys, I'm substituting 1 in for y and I'm substituting in 3 for x because those are our x and our y values that we're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and write, I've got 1 equals 1 times 3 plus b. The reason I put times 3 like that is because the relationship between that 1 and that x is multiplication. So the relationship between 1 and 3 is also multiplication. All right, I need to go ahead and simplify. So I'm going to draw my line down the middle, remember from our algebra unit. I'm going to bring down my 1 because I haven't done anything with him yet. We're going to simplify 1 times 3, which gives us 3. And then I'm going to bring down my remaining variable. Now we need to solve for b. I need to remember, I said this a lot last week, so if you're here last week, you probably know what to do by now. But we have our, when solving algebra problems, we've got constants, which are numbers without variables, and then we've got our variables, which are our letters. So our goal is to get all of our constants to one side, all of our letters to the other. So I'm going to move this 3 over to the other side because I want all yellows or constants to one side, all variables, or a b in this case, on the other side, because that's how I'm going to solve for a missing variable. So I'm going to move one second. I'm going to move a positive 3 by subtracting it. So we're going to use the opposite. So the opposite of a positive 3 is a negative 3. And that's how I'm going to move it over. So 3 minus 3 cancels. I'm left with 1 minus 3, which gives me negative 2. I'm going to bring down my b. So b equals negative 2. This is probably the hardest thing we've learned all quarter, and just because there's just so many moving pieces and parts to it. So we used our point, we solved for b. Now we're gonna plug b into our final equation. So remember, we had y equals mx plus b. Go ahead and type in the chat. We have our slope, we have our b. So what is the formula or the equation for this this line? So I have 2 answers so far. So remember, when you're looking at this, what I'm prompting you to do is we've got m, we're going to substitute in m with whatever we got. So those of you who said y equals 1x, good job. And then we're substituting in b for whatever we got for b. So b, we got negative 2, so we're going to do minus 2. So y equals 1x minus 2. Now, so good job to Maya and Maya. Something I want to reiterate. Yesterday we talked about if we've got x by itself, it's implied that there is a 1 in front of it. So an equivalent for this equation would be y equals x minus 2, because that is the exact same thing as saying y equals 1x minus 2. So those are the exact same thing. Either of them are the right answer though. So I don't think I would do anything on a test or anything to trick you. This is just kind of reminding you of the format. So whenever we've got x by itself, it's just implied that there's a 1 in front of it. All right, lots of moving parts in this do now. Are there any questions about anything? We're going to do lots of examples today because we're doing test review the next 3 days. All right. All right, this week's agenda. Yesterday we talked about graphing equations, writing equations. It was kind of tricky because I tried to implement the Nearpod. Again, I'm still working on your extra credit assignment. So I know I said it would be up yesterday, but you know, I'm on the struggle bus just like a lot of people are. Tuesday through Thursday, we're going to do unit test review. So just be prepared for that. I think you're going to be pretty, if you pay attention, if you ask questions, if you are using your resources, watching videos, if you're doing everything you should be doing, participating in class, you should be just fine on the test. All right, so what's going to be on the test? And I would either, if you need to, I would take a picture of this or something. Also, obviously, I'm going to post this on YouTube later and post it to our Google Classroom. But what's going to be on the test? So I want you to be able to find the slope from 2 points. I want you to be able to calculate rise over run, which is just slope. I can match an equation to a graph. I can graph an equation. I understand what m and b mean. I can write an equation when given m and b. I can match a given slope to a graph. I can identify slope types. So lots of things. We're going to do practice problems for every single one of these skills this week. So you are going to have lots of practice problems to refer to study from, to understand, hopefully, and get some practice and participation. All right. So this first one, I can find the slope from 2 points. I want to make sure that you guys can do this by the end of today, hopefully, because we've been doing this for several weeks. Find the slope of the line through each pair of points. So we've got this first pair of points. We want to find the slope. Those of you who know what to do, you can go ahead and start working on it. If not, I'm going to I'm going to set this up for us. And then I want you guys to be prepared to type your answer in the chat. And then I'm going to tell you when to hit enter, okay? All right, so when solving for slope, remember, m is slope. We're going to do m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So we're going to do the change in y values divided by the change in x values, or the difference in y and x. All right, so a few things. I'm going to label this point number 1, this point number 2. I would always do that, and you guys are going to be able to do your test at like a self-paced, so there's no timer on your test. You'll be able to take as much time as you need, so you'll have plenty of time to just go ahead and work on that. Make sure that you understand everything. Make sure you have time to like process what it's asking you, and instead of like being in a stressful class period where you might have to rush. So that is a benefit of being at home. You guys have time to like process what it's asking you. All right, so I've kind of done some highlighting for you. We're gonna set this up. So it says m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. This is gonna be another one of your lifeline, like you should have this written down somewhere important, how to find the slope of 2 points. You should definitely have this written down somewhere. All right, so we're gonna take y2. So I'm gonna take my y value on point number 2. So I'm gonna take negative 12 minus my y value on point number 1. Remember, these are written in x comma y format. So y1 is going to be negative 14. Next, I've got x2. So I'm going to take negative 5. So that's my x value on point number 2 minus x1, which is going to be negative 12. So go ahead, think about this. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to go ahead and get this plugged into your calculator. And then I want you, when I tell you to, I'll have you guys hit enter. All right, guys, go ahead and hit enter on your slope that you found. All right, and if you're not comfortable sharing it with everyone, you can send it to me privately, but I do need some participation from you guys. So far, I've only got Maya and Namaya participating, so you guys need to start making sure that you are typing into the chat what you think the slope is. And if you're not sure, then you can send me a guess privately, or you can say, send me a message privately saying, whatever you need help with. All right, so I've got some messages privately, I've got some publicly. Thank you for everybody for participating. So let's see, negative 12 minus a negative 14 is gonna give me a positive 2. So if you type that in your calculator, you should get a positive 2. Negative 12 minus a negative, remember minus a negative translates to a positive. All right, then we've got negative 5 minus a negative 12. And that's going to, remember, that changes it into a positive. So negative 5 plus 12 basically. So that's going to be 2/7. So when it says find the slope of the line through each pair of points, our slope is going to be 2/7. All right. Any questions on that? We're going to do some more examples of these in a minute. All right, find the slope of the line through each pair of points. So we're going to do this again. We're going to do it 3 times. So every skill, we're going to practice 3 different problems. So you'll have time to practice and hopefully get it by the end of today. So we've got y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So if you want to work on it on your own, you can. I'm just going to walk everyone through it so we're all on the same page. So I'm going to make this y2, this y1. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You just have to make sure that you keep the order correct. So I'm going to get my highlighter out. So I'm going to highlight my y values. And I'm going to highlight my x values. All right, remember these points are written in x comma y format. So we're going to take y2. I'm looking at the y value from point number 2, so that's 7, minus y1. Well, 7 minus a negative 18 divided by x2. So I'm going to go to my x value on my second point So -8 minus x1, so -7. All right, and I'll give you about 30 seconds to put that into your calculator. Hopefully this should just be practice at this point. We've done this plenty of times. So hopefully this isn't anything new. And if it is, just stay with me. If this is still something new for you, that's okay. I just want you guys to make sure you're asking questions if you have them. All right, so go ahead and enter the slope once you get it. So in our calculators, if we take 7 minus a -18, so it should look like this on your screen. I know it's kind of hard with the glare. Let's see. So 7 minus a -18. That should give us a positive 25. And then we've got -8 minus 7. That's going to give us a -15. So our slope, and I know I'm going to write it over here. So m equals -25 over 15. You actually don't need to simplify it or anything. That is our slope. So -25 divided by 15 or over 15. So I would just make sure, I think the mistakes that I'm seeing are just going to be entering those negatives. So 7 minus a -18. Make sure you're typing in 7 minus -18. That negative button is crucial, and that's going to be next to your enter button. All right, find the slope of the line through each pair of points. All right, we've got y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. It doesn't matter which point you make which, so I'm just going to make it point number 1 and point number 2. You're going to go ahead and identify your y values. So I've got my y values in yellow, and I've got my x values in green. All right, remember we're writing this in x comma y. Oops, that looks like an x. 1 second. X comma y format, x comma y format. All right, so I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna take y2, so that's my y value and my second point. So y value, second point, which is 13, minus my y1, which is -1. So 13 minus a -1 divided by, we've got 4, so that's my x2, so 4 minus x1, which is positive 8. So go ahead, and once you simplify this, go ahead and put this in the chat. Not a lot of people are going to be getting PBIS points today, guys. I've only gotten about 3 people to participate. All right, so if we're looking at this, we're gonna do the top first. 13 minus a -1. Remember, minus a -1, ooh, that was kind of a hot mess. Minus a -1 is the same thing as adding. So when you take away a negative, it's gonna be like adding. So 13 minus a -1 is the same thing as 13 plus 1. So we've got 14, and then on the bottom, 4 minus 8 is going to be -4. So our slope is -14/4, or 14 over -4. So that's going to be our slope for that one. All righty. I can find the rise over run, slope from a graph. This is going to be our next skill that I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with. This is actually what my in-person students are learning right now, so they're way behind you. All right, so if we're looking at this, we got to follow a few steps. One, I'm going to put my pencil on the point furthest to the left. I'm going to find my change in y, so change in y. So I'm going to go up my elevator, up 1, 2, 3, 4. So my change in y is 4. And then I'm going to find my change in x. That triangle just means change. It doesn't mean anything else but change. And I'm going to go over. So I'm going to take my elevator ride, step to the side. So I'm going to step to the side, 1, 2, 3. So if I do that, what is my slope? If I'm doing it as rise divided by run, rise over run, change in y divided by change in x. What is my slope then? All right, so I'm seeing a few different things. Remember, if we're doing change in y over change in x, that's all it is. It's our slope is just 4/3. We'll talk about slope types probably, we'll get to it later, but that is a positive slope, so it's going up. So our slope should also reflect that. Our slope is a positive slope, and we'll see what a negative slope looks like next. But our slope for this one, m, is a positive 4/3, because we go up 4/3, up 4/3. All right, next, I can find the rise over run slope from a graph. So same thing, you're going to put your pencil on the leftmost dot, so leftmost point, and you're going to find your change in y, so your vertical change divided by your horizontal change. So your change in y, your elevator ride, divided by your change in x. So for this one, we're going down the elevator. So since we're going down the elevator, our change in y is going to be -1. So when we go down the elevator or we go down in y, that's when it's going to be negative. And we're going to go over 1, 2. So our change in x is 2. So our slope is -1/2. And we know this because if we go down 1/2, down 1/2, down 1/2, we stay on this line. So that's going to be our slope. And it's a negative line, it's a negative slope, so that negative slope checks out. And that should be a really easy way for you guys to check yourselves also. If it's a negative slope, it should be a negative line. All right, so I did want to go over these with you guys. The only difference between this and what we just did is these that we just went over, these give you points on your graph. These ones do not. So you should still be able to find the rate of change or the slope from a line when it looks like this. The only thing you have to do is you need to identify 2 points on your line where it intersects at your line at a vertical and a horizontal line as well. So like here wouldn't be a good spot to put a dot because that's not at the corner of a box. Here would be a good place to put a dot because that's on our line and it's at a vertical and a horizontal, it's at the corner of a box. So then I'm going to look for another spot on my line. Let's see, I'm looking. Here's another spot I can put a dot because that is at the corner of a box. So hopefully, I did like a little check-in with you guys and you guys said that, last time I said that, you guys said it made sense. So hopefully it's still making sense. So we found 2 points on our graph. I'm gonna go ahead and again, start at my leftmost point and I'm gonna go down 1, 2. So my change in y is -2. Then I'm gonna go over 1, 2, 3. My change in x is 3. So change in y, -2. Change in x is 3. So what's my slope then? Some people actually already messaged it to me. So we've got -2/3. So remember guys, you're just finding your change in y over your change in x. All right. Go ahead and look at this one, guys. We're almost out of here for today. So I'm gonna find some spots to put some dots. I like it when it rhymes. All right. So you're gonna look at any point on your graph where you can put a point. So I'm just looking along my line. Here's a good spot to put a dot. Here's a good spot to put a dot. Here's a good spot to put a dot. You could put one anywhere where your line is at the corner of a box. So we could use any of those points. I'm just gonna go ahead and, Karen, did you have a question, babe? Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pick one of these points. I'm just gonna pick this one down here and I'm gonna find the slope from this one to this one. So we're gonna go find our elevator ride. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna go up 1. So our change in y is 1. Then we're gonna go over 1, 2. So our change in x is 2. So what is my slope then? And a lot of people have been messaging me privately today. It's okay if you're a little nervous to enter your answer. All right, good. When we're talking about our change in y divided by our change in x, that is what slope is. So when you find your change in y, your change in x, you're just going to divide them. So our slope is 1/2. And we can just keep it like that. So our slope m is 1/2. Good. Those of you who said 1/2, very good job. And that makes sense because if we start at a point, up 1 over 1, rise over run, up 1 over 2. So that's going to stay consistent that entire line. All right, next one. We'll probably wrap up soon, but I can match an equation to a graph. So this is something that you should be able to do. You make sure that, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow much more. Remember, we have that y equals mx plus b format that we have identified. So I would make sure in your brain you know which one is the slope and which one is the y-intercept. So for this first one, our slope is going to be 3/5. Our y-intercept is going to be +2. So right away, I'm noticing when I'm looking at my options, I've got 2, 2, and 2 as a y-intercept, but I've got +5 here as my y-intercept. So if I'm looking at my graph, the y-intercept, my line is intersecting that y-axis at +2. So we can cross out b because b wouldn't make sense because that would not be the correct y-intercept. So now since we identified that our y-intercept is at +2, I need to then break it down to slope. So we've got 1/5, 6/5, and 3/5. So we want to go ahead and figure out what our slope is from this line. So I'm going to go ahead, remember, I can start from my y-intercept if I want. I'm going to go until, let's see, I'm going to find another dot. Right there is a good spot to put a point because it is at the corner of a box, so at a corner of a vertical and a horizontal line, and it intersects our line. So we're going to go start at this point from the left. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. So our change in y is 3. Our rise is 3. Our run is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our run is going to be 5. So what's our slope then? We just went over this. like last slide. So if our rise, our change in y is 3, our change in x is 5, what's our slope? Good, 3/5. So I'm looking for a line that has a y-intercept of +2 and a slope of 3/5. So which one, A, C, or D is going to be the right one then? Good, guys. So A is going to be the equation that goes with that. Hopefully those, I'm hoping that those will be some easy points on your test, but I understand it can be kind of confusing sometimes. So we're going to call it here. We're going to go over some more examples tomorrow, several more examples before you take your test. Let me go ahead and stop sharing real quick. So just remember you have 2 assignments this week. One of them is just an activity on Google Classroom that you have to turn in, and then the other one is your test. And I would not do your test until we're done with our test review because it seems like some of us are still could use some practice and some work, which is fine. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.